I signed recently the Kampala Declaration of 2025 on behalf of Botswana. So Botswana is a signatory to the Kampala Declaration of 2025. This declaration enjoins, among other things, that we must, all of us, ensure that we raise agriculture's contribution to GDP by at least 6%. We have committed ourselves as a country. I signed on your behalf and said to the world, we are going to increase the contribution of agriculture to our GDP by at least 6%. And we are going to foster collaborations, partnerships, so that we attain this lofty objective that we've set ourselves. The Khosi says to us, we must transform radically. She says, the transformation must be drastic and it must be dramatic. What does she mean? What she's saying to us in the agricultural space is that while we appreciate the methods by which we've operated thus far, we must now re-examine these methods. We must critique them in order to come up with methods that will now propel the levels of growth that take us above the baseline of 6% addition to the GDP from agriculture. And so we all clearly, without any vacillation or equivocation, recognize that agriculture is an engine of growth. There is absolutely no doubt about this. And this could not be more poignant than in the times that we are in, when our diamonds on which we've overly relied over the years are now facing challenges. And some say, why then do you go around trying to market the diamonds? Why don't you just focus on agriculture and other ventures? We need to continue to push our diamonds because they are our only source of livelihood at the moment. If we stop, we die, we perish almost immediately. So we must maintain the marketing of our diamonds, and we will, because they are our diamonds. They belong to us. Maybe we've not quite appreciated that they do, but they really do. They are mined on our land. People are displaced for these diamonds to be mined. They provide jobs and opportunities. We will continue to defend natural diamonds. But we will also focus on diversifying into other areas. And one of those key areas is agriculture. Cabinet met Wednesday and Thursday with the aid of experts to deliberate intensively on what experts describe as the true north of Botswana. And it was mapped out very crisply. And it will be communicated to you soon. Agriculture was recognized in that engagement as one of the main drivers, engines of growth for our economy. And so we need to identify our role, our contribution, each and every one of us, and be clear about the roles. So there is no doubt. I want you to have not the slightest doubt about our commitment to agriculture. Just yesterday, we dispatched a team of farmers from Botswana. I think it was about 25 of them. They left yesterday. The dominant narrative has been that ministers travel, government officials travel, and well, they must. There are good reasons why they must travel. Otherwise, we would make sure they don't. But even in the most difficult of times, some traveling still needs to be done. But this time around, it's not ministers who traveled. It is ordinary farmers who head farmers associations across the length and breadth of the country. They left yesterday for the country of Bangladesh. Prior to their visit to Bangladesh, we'd invited a team of experts from Bangladesh. One of them, a professor in a university that I think is the equivalent of Buan, the Buan of Bangladesh, a professor there, a guru, was here leading a team on a fact-finding to do a brisk assessment of the lay of the land. And he came back, gave some preliminary feedback. But one of the things he highlighted was the paucity, the lack of knowledge amongst many of our farmers. And he says he engaged some of them in relation to the pesticides that they use. Asked them, why do you use this? Why do you apply it as regularly as you do? What is the science? What is your understanding of the efficacy of this pesticide? And there was absolutely no knowledge. Many are operating out of routine and habit. So he says there's need for intervention, information sharing, training, upskilling, exposure to the best practices in agriculture. And so these farmers who left yesterday will spend a week observing where some of the best practices are being applied and refined on an ongoing basis. And so when they return, the hope, the expectation is that we will establish in every district agricultural centers of excellence. You might want to call them service stations, service centers. We will have in every district an agricultural center of excellence where the best skills will be shared imparted and enacted. So it is not ministers who have traveled, it is the people through their representatives who have traveled to Bangladesh. I'm sure more will travel to other parts to benchmark. Why do people need to benchmark? Books have been written, journal articles have been published, but the books don't do the work. It is people, real people, creatures of flesh and blood, who do the work. And they need experience. And there are others who have the experience. There are others who've modeled and exemplified some of these best practices. And so it is important for us not just to be told, it is important for us to witness, to sample and experience these best practices and see the results that they have yielded in other countries, in other jurisdictions. The better for us, first, to be inspired, but secondly, to be better informed and equipped so we can carry out these practices in our own country. And so it's important for some of these exercises to take place. We also must appreciate the threats and the challenges that we face. Unpredictable weather patterns arising from now the vagaries of nature. We now must operate in climate resilient ways. We experience extreme heat waves, and then we suffer droughts, prolonged droughts, and as if that isn't bad enough, on occasion we experience massive flooding. It was something of a shock when Ghanzi itself flooded. Nobody would have dreamt that at any point there would be floods in Ghanzi. But we had that experience. And so we must position ourselves to anticipate some of these cruelties of nature and prepare ourselves adequately. We also now are seeing harmful weeds, invasive plant species that destroy the veldt, degrade rangelands. We need to deal with these challenges and threats. We also are dealing now with pests. These floods bring with them pests, all sorts of other diseases, waterborne. We must wrestle with these challenges. We have mentioned, and we must keep mentioning, that our cattle herd has declined. It used to be, we are told, 3 million in days gone by. It now is sitting at somewhere between 1.1 million and 1.7 million, and we are not sure about the number because we have not done a proper count. And because all these interventions that we must pursue require data, accurate data. Statistics Botswana is now out trying to establish with exactitude the numbers of our cattle. So we will know at the end of the process that they are on how many cattle we have as a matter of fact. It is important for us to get this number and get it accurately for a very simple but profound reason. In order to go where we want to go, we need to determine accurately and honestly where we are now. We must not flatter ourselves. We must not tell ourselves we are doing well when we are not. And we must also reflect on what we have done or failed to do over the years. And when we do so, we are not doing so to single anybody out for targeted demonization. No. We are reflecting on our collective failures, shortcomings, follies, foibles, and fallibilities as a nation, all of us. Because you might say those who were in power before you failed. We all failed. We did. I don't think they elected themselves. They were put in those positions by us, either by commission or by omission. So we are equally, maybe not equally, but we are also culpable to varying degrees, perhaps. So we must also accept our fair share of the blame for everything that has happened thus far. So we must take full responsibility. Not ascribe blame to this one or that one. We must all acknowledge where we are. So we must determine how many cattle we have in fact. And then I've thrown the gauntlet. I've said we must raise the number wherever it is. Whatever statistics Botswana will tell us, whatever they tell us, we need to raise that number to 5 million. We must have a target. And when we set targets, I want to tell you here and now, when I set targets, I set the most difficult targets. I set targets that the ordinary person would describe as impossible. If the target is not described by others as impossible, it is not for me. I don't do the possible. I struggle towards the impossible. That's what I do. So when I say this country will develop in 3 years, to many, that's an impossible target. That's for me. That's what I do. That's what I want. Why is it important for us to set impossible targets? First, the reason the target seems impossible is that you are looking at that target through the lens of the failed approaches, methods, and patterns of thought and behavior that you've pursued. So you're looking at yourself, how you think, how you behave, and how you've behaved over the years, and then projecting failure